Hey Meeple people, and on today's vlog, we are playing Roll for Lasers, a museum security game by Glass Shoe Games. Let's get into it.
Police received a tip. The local museum is about to be targeted by a group of burglars. To protect the museum exhibits, multiple security firms have been hired, and each will be installing a system of lasers aimed at the exhibits. If a laser is tripped, alarms will sound, alerting police. Museum staff will be judging each security firm's ability to secure their assigned sector. You'll be given one chance to optimally place exhibits and reflective mirrors to create the best coverage, but you'll be working around the past placement of other security firms.
Hello Meeple people, and hello Sarah. Sarah, what game are we playing today?
Today we are playing Roll for Lasers, and I don't have a box lid or like anything to hold up and show you.
We can just show you
it didn't
very
come in
minimalistic
It
paper.
came in a plastic bag. It had this sheet right here, as well as an identical sheet
And there's a sticker that showed a little bit of some artwork.
And the
rules.
And the rules. As well as these markers and this set of dice right here.
Yeah, these set dice.
So there's no box or anything like that.
Add some dice to this.
Yeah, we just, you can share the dice if you want to, or each player can get their own set of 6d6. So we went ahead and did that so we each have our own dice, because if you have enough dice for each player to have their own set, then you can play a large portion of the game simultaneously.
And so you can play it in a faster way, too.
Yeah, and we had plenty of d6 laying around, so we just grabbed an extra set for me. So this game is an indie published game by a little company called Glass Shoe Games. And it is a game in which we are security firms which have all been hired to sort of try out for a security gig at a local museum, which is going to be robbed soon. So apparently they've gotten this tip from the police. They think that the museum is going to be knocked over. So they go out to all these different security firms and they're like, hey, kind of try out and see which of you does well enough protecting our museum exhibits, and whichever one of you does the best will hire you to be our security firm. So that's kind of the premise, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working in this museum right here, and the museum is divided into 4 quadrants, and what's going to happen is each round of the game we are each going to install lasers and mirrors in a quadrant of the museum. And we're going to be trying to position those lasers and mirrors in such a way that the lasers are protecting the museum exhibits. But at the end of each round, we're going to rotate the board so that whatever quadrant you just worked on will move on to the next player, and you'll have a new quadrant to work on. So as we play the game and the quadrants get worked on by each player as it rotates around, eventually you're going to be working on a quadrant that other players have already worked on, and you're going to be trying to work around sort of what they thought was best when they installed the mirrors and the lasers in that quadrant. So it's a pretty simple game. What's going to happen is there's going to be, and I'm speaking specifically for the 2-player game. I'm not sure what changes in the higher player counts, but specifically in the 2-player game, what's going to happen each round of the game is at the beginning of the round, you're going to roll 6d6, just standard dice that have 1 through 6 on each side, and you're going to roll them. And the initial roll is to place the museum exhibits. So if, for example, let's just say that we gave this a little roll and this was my results. Now I can use these here to create coordinates that I will use to place museum exhibits. For example, let's say that I rolled this 3 and this 4 here. So I could place one of my museum exhibits here, or I could place it here. Right? So I would choose the dice to use, which pairs to use, and I would relate the museum exhibits that I've chosen here to the grid. So let's say that I decide that I'm going to use this spot right here. So I'm going to make a museum exhibit in that spot right there. And if I was more artistic, maybe I would draw something that might be a museum exhibit, but I'm not, so I'm going to draw this blob, and it's going to signify my museum exhibit. And now I've used this set of dice here, so I can't use those again. I will choose another set of dice coordinates if I want to. So I could do the 5, 5. That would put another exhibit here, and so on. You don't have to use all these dice if you don't want to. And 6s in a 2-player game are basically wild, so you can use them for anything. So if I did decide to use this last pair here, whoops, I'd have a 4 and anything I want. So let's just say that I do a 4, 2, and I put the final exhibit right here. That's the first phase of the first round of the game. The next phase, we're gonna roll our 6 dice again. And this time we're placing mirrors, and the mirrors are going to direct lasers that will hopefully secure the exhibits that we've just established. So these mirrors are going to be placed, let's say, let me see what I've got here. I've got a couple of wilds I can use. I've also got some 4s, a 2, and a 5. So let's say that I decide to put a 5, and I'm going to use one of my 6s for a 1. So I'm going to go down my 1 to my 5, and I'm going to put a mirror right here. Now, if a laser is shot at this mirror, the laser is going to bounce off of the mirror and travel up to this exhibit right here. And so basically, I've just secured this exhibit from anything that would bounce off of this mirror right here. So I would do the same thing again here, and again, you don't have to use all the die if you don't want to. So let's just say that I did 4 and a 1 with that one, so that would look something like this. And finally, I do a 4 and a 2, so that would look something like... I can't put it there since there's already a museum piece there, so it would have to be here. And I can go this way, or I could go this way. I think I'm gonna go this way this time. Okay, so that is the second phase of each round. And the third and final phase of each round would actually be rolling for the lasers. So in this case, we're gonna roll all 6 of our die again. And this phase is not played simultaneously. This phase, we're gonna go with the player who has the most points first. And what they're gonna do is they're going to take any number of dice that they wanna use that would form the numbers anywhere between 2 and 12. And then they would use that number to fire some lasers. So for example, let's say that I'm gonna go with the number, I'm gonna go with the number 2. All right, so using the 2 here, I have to start at my little signpost right here. So I have to start right here, but I can go in either direction I want, and I can even travel outside of my quadrant if I want to. So if I used, say that I used this 9 right here, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I could fire a laser in this direction, right? So maybe Nick had put like a bunch of his stuff in a row right here. I could say, oh, you know, I'm gonna fire my laser that way, and it's gonna go through all of your things there. So I've decided to use this 2 here. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, I'm gonna fire a laser. It's gonna hit this exhibit right here, and I'm gonna get a point for that. And then it's gonna keep going until it either hits another mirror or it hits a wall. When that happens, it's gonna stop or bounce. And hopefully I'm going to be able to fire my lasers in such a way that I can bounce them off of a bunch of mirrors so that they hit a bunch of exhibits before they exit the museum. For every exhibit that I hit with a laser as it bounces around between the mirrors, I will get a point. And at the end of the laser firing sequence, we'll write into this section here how many points we've gotten for that particular round.
And you get what, 1 reroll per round?
Yeah, so once per round, you can roll any number of your dice one time. Yeah, that your unused dice one time. Now the entire round is comprised of rolling for the museum exhibit placements, the mirror placements, and firing the lasers. So that's 1 round. You only get 1 reroll at any point during that time. But you do get 1 free reroll. You can roll any number of unused dice with that reroll. Once you make it through all 3 phases of a round, then the board is gonna rotate. Like I said earlier, the board is gonna rotate, and you're going to use the next quadrant, right? So look, I had just been working in this quadrant here. On this round, I'm gonna be working in this quadrant here. And Nick will be working in a different quadrant as well. So by the end of our second round in a 2-player game, when it comes around to us, when the board rotates, we're actually going to be working within a quadrant that the other player has already started to set up some mirrors and lasers and artifacts and stuff like that. So when it comes around to that second round, we're going to be trying to work either around or work with things that other players established. And we're going to be trying to use what they built to hopefully get us a lot of points. So it's got an interesting premise. Should we give it a try, Nick?
Yeah, I really love it when you have to rotate it, and then now you're working with someone else's stuff or around someone else's stuff, and I just love the adaptability of this game. So yeah, let's get into it and play some Roll for Lasers. All right, toodles! Welcome back, Meeple people, and hello, Sarah.
Hi there.
So, Sarah, how's it going in Roll for Lasers so far?
I think it's going pretty well. So normally we would stop at the halfway point of a game and come back and talk about it and then come back again at the end. But this time I wanted to go 3/4 of the way through instead of stopping at the halfway point because I wanted to show you what it would look like when we start using the same quadrants. So in the first 2 rounds of the game, we each had a quadrant to ourselves and we didn't have to contend with anything that the other one of us had done. But starting in the 3rd round, we had to start working with stuff that the other player had put on the board in a previous round. So that's what it looks like. Nick just worked on this quadrant here, which I had previously worked on, and I just worked on this quadrant here, which Nick had previously worked on. And so now we're starting to see some of that, trying to work around or work with what the other player had established. And for me, it went pretty well in this last round because I had dice that let me sort of bounce around in this area here, and my lasers went through all 4 of these artifacts, and I was able to do that 3 different times with different dice that I had. So you always have to start from the same place, and I'm sorry, you can never start from the same place when you fire lasers. So you always start from here when you're counting up your laser movement. So I had a 3, so I went 1, 2, 3, and then I was able to fire from here and go boop 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 boop, and I got all 4 of these artifacts here. And then I was able to do the same thing again. I had another 3, so I went 1, 2, 3. Nope, that doesn't work. I must have had a 5 maybe, and I did it again this way, and then like I had another one where I could do it like a 3rd time. So
you're making all the points.
Yeah, so I got 12 points just for bouncing lasers around in that one little box right there on my last turn. So that was nice, but
I got 6.
In the 2 previous rounds, Nick had gotten more points than I did. So now I think I'm a little bit ahead, but it's still a very tight game, and we have one last round left, and we're each going to be again working in a quadrant that the other one has already placed some artifacts and lasers, or excuse me, artifacts and mirrors into that quadrant. So we shall see. What do you think so far, Nick?
I like it. It's a really small game. There were some things we'll probably talk about at the end, like for production wise, that we saw that were just kind of like, this would have been nice, or that would have been nice.
Could have been a little bit better.
A box lid would have been nice. Or like a cool looking envelope would have been nice.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end, but I think the gameplay is...
Oh yeah, the gameplay is nice.
Yeah,
like,
it's
really
definitely fun and interesting and
not trying
very
to get
unique.
Yeah, not trying to get too nitpicky with it, but with what's here is like very enjoyable, and it's really I really have enjoyed this one.
I normally don't really like roll and writes all that much. I usually find them to be something that I don't want to spend my time doing for one reason or another, but this one is actually a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this one quite a bit. It's it could be very brain burnery if you allowed that.
There was a point where you were like done. It's like I'm still like smoke coming out of my ears, like thinking where to put these stinking mirrors so I can get some points later on.
Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about some like areas where we think the game could potentially be improved in when we do like a wrap up. But one thing that I think would have been nice, we kind of just had to like come to it on our own, but it might have been nice if they would have like, hey, some strategy tips are, and then if they would have told us about a certain way to kind of figure out how to best use your pips for lasers. I've figured out this like sort of mathematical trick that you can use and it kind of helps you figure out the best way to spend your lasers. I think without that, it can be really, really brain burnery. And with that, even best case scenario, I think it still shows a lot of AP, analysis paralysis, right? So players can really get stuck trying to figure out what is the most
optimal way of play.
Exactly. But I think I've got this little math thing worked out that kind of helps to figure that out in a quicker way than just like sitting there staring at it going, okay, the laser's going to bounce off of that mirror and then that mirror, and then I'm going to, on the way, it's going to hit these two things. And so I think that there's some things they could have done to kind of present this a little bit better, not just visually, but also in a way that would like present it to players in a way that was a little bit easier to approach, like the strategies and tactics of the game, possibly. But like I said, we'll finish up and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump back in to Roll for Lasers. All right, toodles. Welcome back, Meeple people, and hello, Sarah.
Hi.
So how did it end up in the Roll for Lasers?
My security film has lost the contract.
We are all knowing and all lasering.
It was close. I had 39 points, Nick had 42.
Yeah.
But in the end, he had what it took. His last round, he did really well. He got 19 points in his last round. And he just did really great, bouncing lasers off of mirrors and protecting all the museum exhibits and stuff like that. What did you think of the game overall, Nick?
I think the overall gameplay is good. I liked how the lasers and placing everything went, and then how implementing the lasers kind of like, okay, you got points here, you got points there, you're trying to figure out and you're trying to future plan. But as we talked about before, AP can really come into this game pretty, there was a couple times you were already ahead and I was like, I'm still thinking on this one.
And part of the reason I think it was for me was because I was just like, I knew that if I let it, analysis paralysis could really take a hold. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to like do the best thing that I can, but without backciliating over it. Yeah. So I think that is one area where the game could maybe use a little bit of a designer assistance, is doing something to make it, to decrease the potential analysis paralysis. One thing that I found that made it a little bit easier for me was that when you roll your dice to fire the lasers, you have 6 dice that you're working with, and you can use those dice to make numbers between 2 and 12 and fire your lasers anywhere from there. So you have to start at your signpost. So like this was my signpost in the last round. From here, I can move up to 12 spaces, right? So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I could like fire from over here if I wanted to, if I want to spend that number of dice, right? Or I could like just spend like a 3 to go like 1, 2, 3 and fire from here. So you're using different combinations of your dice in this final round to, or final phase of each round, to fire these lasers. And one thing that I found to be useful for me was that I would roll the dice and then I would just figure out what my potential range was, right? So like in this case, I have a 1, I have a 2, I have a way to make a 3, I have a way to make a 4, I have a way to make a 5, I have a 6, I have a way to make a 7, I have a way to make an 8, I have a way to make a 9, I have a way to make a 10, I have a way to make a 11, and I have a way to make a 12. So I know that if I count all these up over here and say, okay, if I start here and I make a 2, I go 1, 2, okay, my laser will just get me just 1 there, right? Okay, let's see what a 3 does. That's just gonna get me 2. Let's see what a 4 does. That's just gonna get me 1. And that way you can kind of see what each possibility would get you, and then if you come up with a good one, you can be like, okay, if I use the number 4, I'm going to be able to get 3 treasures or whatever. So for me, that was the quickest way to overcome AP, was to just kind of figure out like, okay, what's my potential range of options, and then which of those is the best, and then is that actually possible, because my range is only based off of like the numbers I use, right? So for example, if I said, well, it'd be really great if I could use a 12 for one, right? So okay, I assign these 2 dice to make a 12. And for another one, it'd be really great if I could make a 7. So I use those side 2. And then for my third one, it would be really great if I could make an 8. Well, I already used all the 6s, so I'm not going to be able to make an 8, right? So just kind of figure out, like, what are the best possible ones for me to combinations for me to use? How many points am I going to get for each of those potential combinations? And then, you know, using the dice as best as possible. So it's still some AP, but for me, that was the easiest way to kind of approach the problem without having my brain catch on fire. Because this is a lot thinkier than you would assume for a pen and paper game, essentially. There's actually quite a bit that you could potentially get like caught up in your head over. But I think it was fun. It was definitely very, very unique. I think it's really thematic. And I think there are some production areas where they could have sort of cleaned things up a little bit. For example, I wrote the grids on here because to me that made it easier to, you know, everything is a grid system in this game. So except when you're counting for the lasers, right? So when you're placing your artifacts and your mirrors, you're using a grid system. Well, without this number on there, you'd have to count every single time to figure out where everything was. And we actually watched the video, a how to play video from the publisher of this game. And the very first thing that she did in her how to play video was write these numbers on her sheet as well. So I don't know why they didn't just print the numbers on here. I understand that may not have been as, you know, thematic looking to have the grid on there, but I think
You could put them in paintings.
True. I think it would have been really useful to have this grid actually printed on the board. I think another area where it would have been kind of nice to see the game polished a little bit was in like the scoring area here. This is just a tiny minor gripe, but when you're scoring, you have the potential to score for up to 3 lasers. So if you're like, okay, here's the first one, it bounces off of this mirror and it goes that way and it does this, and I count it all up and I get 6. Well, for me, I was actually making like tally marks off to the side, right? I'd be like, okay, I got 6 for that one. And then for my second laser, I got 3, right? There's like another 3. And then for my third one, I got like 2. And then I was having to add all these together before I could put my final score in the box over here, which is fine. It worked that way. It was no big deal, right? But I felt like that was just kind of a strange way to have to approach the problem. What else, Nick? What do you think?
We were talking about, well, you know, game-wise, there were a few things that we were just like, you know, if this was just clarified, or if this was, you know, the numbers were, production-wise, if the numbers were put on the board. And also, we were talking about if the scoring board was just separate from it entirely to make space for those, you know, first laser, second laser, third laser. And even also, if the board was just bigger, and maybe if the squares were as big as the other ones. But then, you know, I think you would come to the conflict or the issue of if the boards were separated, then, you know, people could move things around. And it's like, how would you set that up, and what more would you have to put on the board to make sure, you know? Yeah. Everything was, I don't know, sometimes I feel like it would have been nice to just have a board that folds, you know, as the normal game boards. I know they were just trying to make this a nice, accessible game.
Yeah, if they did that, if they made this a board, like a standard playing board, and they gave us pieces for the lasers and artifacts, I'm sorry, the mirrors and the artifacts, we could basically play the same game without having to write anything but the scores down, right? And that could be a really, really interesting sort of...
like deluxe version?
Maybe.
Or something like that?
Maybe. I think it would change the feeling of the game because
Yeah.
this is essentially a roll and write, whereas that would be
More of a board game.
yeah, more of a board game. But I could see that also being a really cool game too.
Yeah.
And it would be exactly the same as what you're doing here.
Yeah, but yeah, like we said, I think that would be too different from what's trying to go on here because you can bring this anywhere.
You
and
can.
could,
It's a single
know-
sheet of paper. It's if you don't mind sharing the dice, it's 6 dice and a marker. And they gave us tiny dice, so it could be even, like really, really small dice and a marker and, and the piece of paper, and that's it. So it's got a really small footprint. I think that probably made it a lot easier to produce, right?
Yeah.
Than if you're actually producing like a board with pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think it would be interesting. I feel like it would be pretty much the exact same game to play with a board and pieces. But I think it would feel a lot different
Yeah.
if you were playing with board and pieces. So that
Definitely.
would be kind of an interesting thing to see. I like it as a roll and write. I think it works just fine as a roll and write. I do wish they would have put a little bit more effort into the production of it. I wish they would have maybe just kind of spent a little bit more time polishing it. It works just fine, but there are some things I feel like they could have added, like the grid system and a few other things like that. And I feel like if they had play tested it, and that those things were brought up, they either decided for whatever reason not to include them, or they didn't play test it with people outside of their own group, which I don't know that that's the case, especially because it works just fine mechanically. It's fine. So I don't want to say that, oh, they didn't play test it enough. I don't want to say that at all because mechanically it works just fine. I think just there's a few areas where it could use a little bit of polish, and if they'd play tested it outside of their own little group, then maybe people would have brought those things up to them. And maybe they did, and they just decided not to roll with the polish anyway. For one reason or another, it could have been, financial decision. It could have been, they felt like it was changing their game too much, or they weren't comfortable with that kind of thing. I'm not really sure. I just feel like if they had maybe polished this a little bit or shown it to people outside of their own, little group, then maybe those people would have said like, hey, I think it would be better if it, had a grid system, or it would be better if the score pad was a little bit bigger, or, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So this was our vlog on Roll for Lasers. We appreciate them sending us a copy to review and do a little vlog on.
Certainly.
And-
Despite the criticisms, I think it was a really fun game, especially for, like I said, I don't particularly care for roll and writes that much. There's usually not a ton of roll and writes that I enjoy, but this one was really fun for a roll and write. It's really, really interesting and unique. I've never played a game quite like this one before. And if you like roll and writes, if you like working with things that you're given, right? If you're like, here's stuff, figure out how to make it work. If you like that kind of thing.
And that's one of the points I really liked about it, because it was like, here's some stuff, figure it out. It's in your hands.
Yeah. And if you like dice rolling games. If you like any of those things, I would definitely give this one a try because it was a really neat experience. I just think it could use a little bit of polish, but it was really, really cool game, and it's neat. So you should check it out if you like any of those things, or if it seemed interesting as we played through the block. So,
All right. Well, again, that was Roll for Lasers and through Glass Shoe Games. And yeah, we hope you all enjoyed this vlog, and we will catch you on the next one. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on all of our content. All right, toodles!